The next piece of the puzzle when it comes to solving your front squat will be the lats. Now the lats tie in at your thoracolumbar fascia, so low on your lumbar spine, at the crest of your hip, and then they also tie in on the inside of your humerus. So they act as an internal rotator into this position. So if we're trying to get external rotation here and flexion, if our internal rotators are tight, then we're going to kind of resemble this position, and we can't really get into that externally rotated position. So the first thing you're going to need is a lacrosse ball. You can start with a tennis ball if it's really brutal with a lacrosse ball, but most people are going to be all right to start with a lacrosse ball. Now, in order to find where your lats tie in on the humerus, you're going to go just behind the elbow, and you'll notice that there's this little groove or there's this little indentation, and that's right kind of where we're going to put this lacrosse ball. So the way this is going to go, you're going to lay down on your side, find that little groove, and put the lacrosse ball just in that groove behind your armpit. Hips are closed, shoulders stay closed, so don't rotate open or anything like that. We want to keep as much of our body weight into the ball. And now we're actually going to roll on the ball, moving our whole body. And notice I use this hand to apply a little pressure into the ground if I need to take some pressure off the ball. And I also use my elbow. So together with those two, I can fully elevate myself off the ball, or just relax a little bit and then apply the pressure into the ball. So I'm just going to roll my body around. Again, hunting around for anything that's really, really tight, really tender. Take a couple deep breaths and try to relax into that position. Now, once I've done that, if I find a spot that really lights me up, instead of moving my body, now I can move my appendage. So now I can take myself through internal rotation and external rotation. I'm not too tight, but you'll find in guys that do a lot of pull-ups like daily, that's part of their warm-up, this is something that's really going to light you up. So first, work through that. You can also keep the arms straight, go into shoulder flexion and a little bit of extension, and you'll find if you're going to be doing overhead pressing, anything like that, if this lat is tight, it's going to limit you getting overhead. So that's the first step, first piece of the puzzle. Next, this is a classic. This is just going to be a lat stretch on a rack, but a few little tweaks here which are going to make a big difference. Now, I start out, put one hand on the rack. Now, I sit back into both hips. This is where most people stop the stretch. And this is decent, yes, but there's a better way to improve it. From here, I'm going to take the same leg as the arm that's up on the rack, and I'm going to kick it back and wrap it around a little bit. Still trying to sit back into that hip. So now I've kind of laterally flexed my spine and opened up this side of my lat. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tuck my head a little bit next to my arm, kind of relax into this position, and then try and open this hip just a little bit. And this is where you'll really feel a little bit more of the stretch lower down in that thoracolumbar fascia and a little bit more up into this armpit region. From here, I generally don't like to perform repetitions like sinking back and then relaxing or anything like that. I more prefer to breathe into the stretch. So what we're doing is as we're inhaling into the rib cage, and that rib cage is expanding during inhalation, you'll find that you'll actually increase the stretch in the lat, and then as you exhale, you can sit back a little bit further into the stretch as that muscle begins to relax. But just like on the foam rolling, the lacrosse ball work, we're trying to use the breath to decrease the tone within the muscle. In the lats case here, we're going against what they're used for, internal rotation and flexion of the shoulder. Here we're externally rotated and in a position of extension overhead. Plus, we've extended ourselves a little bit back through the hip, and then we've laterally flexed a little bit through the spine. So, lacrosse ball first, then go into the banded rack stretch. Or excuse me, the rack stretch, no band.